Regardless of what my mood and my stance on Star Wars is, usually admiration and appreciation and love for the comic books and the novels, and groaning frustration and desire to nuke mankind into nuclear oblivion when it comes to the movies, the Star Wars franchise does have a big problem that has started with the prequels and has been exacerbated by the new material. And that problem is specifically connected to the expanded universe and how the films are connected to the expanded universe. Now, the majority of the expanded universe is something that I greatly appreciate. Like I already said in not just a few in this video, but in also many other videos, Star Wars is at its best in the expanded universe as far as I'm concerned, specifically the comic books and the novels. That's where I feel like the strongest writers are being introduced. That's where I feel like a lot of the strongest stories, whether they're plot-driven or character-driven, are being made. And that's really where my love for Star Wars goes into. And, there are, of course, a lot of video games, back from the pre-EA days that I really like. And I liked, the Clone Wars cartoon from both 03 and 08. And that is, what I consider to be, the great Star Wars material, and I'm just not crazy about the films. But despite this, the original trilogy, whatever I feel about it, it was a self-contained storyline. You could just watch the original trilogy from beginning to the middle to the end, and you could get a complete storyline. You could get where Luke starts out, where he concludes, where Leia starts out, and where she goes off, where Han is at New Hope, and where he is with Leia at the end of Return of the Jedi, and you get a full storyline. And the expanded universe stuff, such as Shadows of the Empire, which is meant to serve as like a bridge between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, that's like a cool little multimedia project akin to the Clone Wars stuff, between Attack of the Clones and of course, Revenge of the Sith, that is meant to, give you something to, bite your teeth into and to enjoy between the films. And then there's, the Thrawn trilogy and a lot of the post-Return of the Jedi stuff that's there to expand the universe past Return of the Jedi that, once again, you can enjoy on its own merits without needing to see the films. And the films are not built on, or rather, they're not reliant on what the expanded universe does when it comes to the original trilogy. But ever since the prequel era, there has been this kind of issue with the Star Wars film that's gotten really bad with the new movies, where it feels like the films require you to read the expanded universe. For example, you cannot understand what the politics of Phantom Menace are if you don't read either Darth Plagueis or Cloak of Deception, both of which were written by James Luceno, one of the best, Star Wars writers that's ever been involved with the franchise. And a lot of those two storylines are intrinsically tied into the various politics of Phantom Menace, setting up the background for the Phantom Menace, for the Clone Wars, and for all of that shit. And because the prequel films do a shitty job of explaining to you what, the Trade Federation is, why there's like a galactic civil war going on, why did the Clone Wars start, there is so much background material that you just have to read either the novels or even watch, the Clone Wars animated series. There is just too much key information being left out of the movies that make you require to dive into the expanded universe, which is, of course, a positive and a negative. From a business side, this is actually, kind of brilliant because it forces your audience to dive into more material, to spend more money on Star Wars comics, on novels, on video games, watching more TV shows, getting all the supplementary material to get the bigger picture. And because a lot of this supplementary material is actually really, really good, you actually get to enjoy actual good Star Wars storytelling. So there is a positive side to this problem, but if you're someone who just doesn't want to read a Star Wars comic or a novel or jump into the expanded universe, and you just want to watch something that can stand on its own but gets enhanced by other material, the prequel era is where you kind of start to get fucked, at least on the politics side. A lot of the other prequel elements can be perfectly enjoyed on their own if you just watch the prequels. But the new films have really taken this problem and taken it to a vast extreme where you cannot tell me anything about the First Order, the New Republic, what their relationship is, what Leia has been doing, how does this resistance movement that exists in a galactic federation, not a galactic federation, but a new galactic republic, How does that thing exist? Where does the New Order, where's the First Order come from? There is so many things that are being left out of the new movies, even the two new ones that we have right now, that enrich the storyline so much that they feel like big key components that should have been in the plot of the movie. The politics of The Force Awakens. You have no idea what the fuck the politics are. You have absolutely no context for the galactic stage in The Force Awakens if you don't dive into stuff like Bloodline. And you don't really get a sense of what Finn's backstory is, or Poe's backstory is. And even when you do, the backstory either doesn't really enrich the story any for the character, and it can even provide completely contradictory characterization that makes no sense when you transition into the film stuff. And there's just no context for anything. You have no reason to care about Starkiller Base. You have no reason to understand what Leia's stance is. Like, why does she have this separate resistance thing that's kind of part of the New Republic, but kind of not part of it? There's just too much context that simply does not exist in the Force Awakens film that you have to read several books or novels or comic books to really even understand. That's not a situation where the movie gives you something to pique your interest, and then if you dive into the expanded universe, this is going to enrich the movie. No, this is required reading. This is basically homework that you gotta read if you even have a chance of enjoying the films. And Rogue One is kind of like this too, where there's this really fascinating character with Galen Erso, you know, the father of Jyn Erso, like how he was manipulated by his friend. How did Krennic build himself up to get to the position of director of the freaking Death Star when you have guys like Vader and Tarkin and other able-bodied, you know, admirals and, you know, Imperial officials all around there? Like, how did this guy get this much wanted position in a world where Tarkin and Vader exist? What's the storyline there? How did Galen Erso, this simple scientist, become one of the biggest progenitors for like the worst superweapon the galaxy had seen up until that point? And then there's going to be a Jyn Erso novel where her backstory is going to be explained, where you're going to actually get a sense for her character, because the films do a really, really shitty job of conveying the fact that Jyn Erso is supposed to be like this former child soldier, and the fact that she is kind of fucked up personality-wise is supposed to be a consequence of that. You get absolutely no sense of this from the movie itself. You get no sense of this. She just comes off as like a cold-hearted bitch because that's who she is. And the few tidbits of backstory you do get on her, they don't give you good enough context to where you can say, okay, you didn't give me the whole storyline, but you gave me enough to where I can see where this character is coming from. And it's like homework. Basically, you have to read all this other shit to make Rogue One watchable. At least like Force Awakens can be kind of enjoyable on its own, but Rogue One in particular is really bad, where you just have to read so much stuff. You have to do so much homework just so you can actually sit down and enjoy, or possibly enjoy, this fucking movie. And that's kind of egregious. And like I said, this can be a good thing. This can, you know, get people to, you know, jump into the expanded universe and see what good Star Wars is actually like. But it's, you know, makes sense from a business side, because this way they can, you know, sell more and more novels, they can sell more and more books, and they can know that people are going to buy more of this shit if they get the sense that they kind of need it to watch the films. But at least for me, as it stands right now, the new movies have really exacerbated this problem that was introduced with the prequels, where you have no fucking chance of either caring or knowing about what's going on, why anyone does anything, if you just watch the new stuff on its own and you don't do a bunch of homework that's set concurrently with the films or before them. And usually that material can, you know, be kind of expansive. It can go into all kinds of different directions. And from a business side, it makes sense. And it could make people, you know, fans of what good Star Wars is actually like. But that's at the detriment of the films. I should not have to read the fucking Jyn Erso novel that's going to come out like 8 months after Rogue One, just so I could maybe not want to slap Felicity Jones in the face, or laugh at her when she's trying to act, quote unquote, if I ever, God forbid, rewatch Rogue freaking One. So yeah, that is kind of the crux of the Star Wars Expanded Universe problem. It is not a completely bad thing, but it's progressively getting more and more irritating, and I find myself really surprised that more people aren't talking about the fact that the expanded universe has become mandatory homework rather than something that enriches the universe but is an optional thing you don't absolutely have to read to like the main installments. So yeah, guys, do you agree with me on my stance on this material? Do you think that the new movies do not hold up if you don't read this other stuff? Do you think I'm just exaggerating things? Do you agree with my stance on, the new movies or the old ones? What do you think about this whole subject? Please comment, like down below, and I'll see you next time. Bye.